Blog Talk Radio.
And welcome, everyone, to New Earth Nation Radio Prime Time. This is your host, the Galactic Historian, Andrew Bartzis. Today, I am interviewing Laura Uplinger for the second time. We are talking the conscious birthing experience, parenting, and the modern paradigm of childhood. Laura, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with all of you.
And an honor to be with you. In the first show that we had, it was an amazing view into the thing. It was not normal the way we did this interview. We had an extra person on that interview. We still got into some of the nitty-gritties of conceptual growth in children. Let's talk conscious birthing. And you've written a book. You've done multiple talks on it. Let's look into the linguistics of what conscious birthing is.
Okay, you want to start with the birth already and skip conception? Okay.
No, let's start with birth, and then we'll lead into conception, because most people miss the conception part, that it's a spiritual process. It's very involved. Human beings get taught conception before spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Well, the
birthing before period spirituality, sorry.
Yeah. We have only tackled what happens in the human body at the time of labor and birth, labor of the mother, birth of the baby. This is very new understanding. And you know what? What we have discovered is that we are mammalians. So throughout history, all this kind of social birthing, when an heir of the throne was being born, people needed to be there to witness that it was really the baby being born out of that woman. And even nowadays, we go to hospitals. We interrupt right there the very mammalian process of intimacy, of deep down understanding of the wisdom of life. And right now as we're speaking, many births are being robbed, and many labors too. Just to induce a protocol, by so many centimeters you will have a special, technological maneuver done to you. They're going to break your waters. They're going to give you a pitocin. They're going to augment labor. All that shows that we have absolutely no respect and no understanding of the human body. Isn't that fascinating?
It's a disconnection from our source in all ways. So many times I've said you come into the birth and you're born, and the first thing that happens is your embryonic sac is cut, your umbilical cord is cut, you're slapped in the butt, given injections, and stuck in an incubator before you even touch your mother's heart. That is nowhere near a natural birth.
No, and we have not, even the tribes, many tribes around the world, in very faraway forests, the majority, there are some exceptions, have even prevented the babies from having the colostrum, thinking that the colostrum was a bad something, a bad liquid, that the devil could be present there or any entity. And now we know the millions of immunoglobulins will be there in the first hour of life. We have refused to be who we came to be for millennia. It fascinates me that the most simple thing, everybody will do that. Everybody will be born and everybody dies. Those are two major taboos, even in other societies without technology and kings. And the gentle birth, the birth that is faithful to our neurophysiology, is an exquisite birth. Of course, I had an experience like that, but in my particular case, I did not feel the pains of labor. My mother didn't either. It was not because of visualization. Some mothers, as they labor, do not experience their contractions as a pain. It would just be like a normal contraction. And
followed by moments of ecstasy that put the mind into a high frequency. Yes,
and you can pray, and you can suddenly connect or at least think of.
And that's been measured. That has been measured, the ecstasy kundalini energy in the brain of a woman giving birth.
Yeah, and it's pure oxytocin stuff. We even know from the kundalini experience, the expansion, and you become it. I mean, there was a fire in the fireplace. There was giving birth in our living room. Mm-hmm. Oh, sweet sweet moment. But had anybody approached me and touched me and do some, anybody would have done some procedure on me, I think I would have kicked. I mean, hey, come on. And yes, there was a midwife and an assistant, but they were in a second, far away plan.
And you had a zone of trust of them, and they weren't a nurse that's working on 92 other patients that day that's been overworked for 6 months that doesn't really give a crap about your birth.
True, Andrew. They even had those midwives as their part of their normal home birth attendance. Once they see the baby fine, breathing, everything is okay, before even cutting the cord, they would leave the couple completely free to welcome the baby.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, isn't that amazing?
That's so the heart bond of the mother and father can finish as the babies in this reality now, instead of the reality of the embryonic sac, instead of the reality of the baby, still connected to the umbilical cord, still into the infinite source.
Yeah, and you imagine gazing into the eyes of your own child and say, we thought of this name for you.
Yep.
Do you agree with it? And have
yeah.
that child open-handed, just looking at you and smiling. I mean, this is gorgeous. But this would be the very normalcy of birth.
Yep.
I shouldn't be telling the story as a privileged person. I should be telling the story as something very common. Like yesterday, I went to the market. I mean, that's how birth should be.
Mm-hmm.
There should never be any protocol behind there. And for the birth that needs extra help, special help, these births would be seen by either the mother herself or somebody right there, because it would be free to just assess that place of communion we have with life. It would not be just one more mother, one more number, because accidents do happen in hospitals. Women are neglected, even in hospitals.
You see it in senior citizens' homes all the time. And I've done a tremendous amount of work with the senior citizen community and the Alzheimer's community, doing energy healing on them, tremendous amount of work with pregnant women, mainly realigning their energy system after arguments. You surprised how much an argument affects a pregnant woman and that baby.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They have no choice. They cannot say, bye, mommy, I'm going to go out for the weekend. Mm-hmm. I'll be back. In the womb, we are one with the mother. Everything the mother is becomes food to that baby. Will give its message to every tissue, every organ that is being formed. So it is paramount that mothers know their power. Who they are is of an immense importance for that baby. And who is the mother? Mm-hmm. Well, what she thinks, what she feels. Have you ever gone back in womb memories, Andrew?
Actually, yes. That's one of my big teachings, is to bring myself back to the 0 point of fetus in mother's womb and to make that active visual of meditation. And I've been doing this for about 20 years now. And each time I do, I get more and more and more of the infinite perspective of the little infant fetus that I was, making the very beginning concepts of the agreements of spirits I was going to be in with life. Yeah. And some became contracts because I needed a third teacher that was going to make sure I did my reading and writing.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's spiritual contracts. I know some people have issues with them. Babies plan ahead, sometime many, many, many deep ahead. The plan doesn't always work, but they have a plan, because it'll be several years before they learn language, before they learn how to use their fingers, before they stop sucking on their mother's breast, and that they're actually sleeping in their own bed and saying, I can plan this in the safety of this home.
Yes, we plan ahead, and sometimes we're reluctant.
Yeah.
To come here. Sometimes our guides kind of really encourage, almost force us to come here. But this time seems to be a time where many want to be born, to be part of those choices humanity is facing now. And I have heard in the 40s there was even a promise that from the 70s onward, a few qualities, less people would be able to come, in the sense that not just any criminal, not just any person who would distort the messages of love. We would have a higher quality of souls allowed to come in. A kind of a supervision, let's say, of who is coming in. I'm very curious. Those who are now in their 30s, and their 40s, starting social entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. I just turned 40 in the 23rd of March, and it was a big deal for me, a big deal to be able to survive that long. And the amount of things that are available now compared to 39, gigantic difference.
Yeah, and you came with friends. You came, of course, many have paved the way for all of you who want to speak a universal language. You even have a lingua franca. Look at the English.
Yep.
With many nationalities being able to speak English. Where were you born?
Cleveland, Ohio. My parents were immigrants from World War II from Greece, both born there during the war. My grandmother was born here in the United States, but they went back to Greece in 1929. A little bit after that, I'm sorry, it was probably just before the war started, so it must have been 1939. My great-grandfather must have gone back and forth in Greece while they were helping building the railroads out in San Francisco.
Wow.
So it was a classic immigrant story, going back to Greece, the war starts, my mom and her brother are born there. My dad's born there during the war. They all saw the atrocities of the war. And then they were on the third or fourth boat out and landed in Ellis Island. And my grandfather had to wait another 7 years before they let him in the country because my grandmother was an American citizen, but then they didn't recognize women who married a foreign citizen, and she was part of the Bolton exercise, congressman, one of the first women's rights congressmen. And she was in a key part on making sure that they testified in front of Congress in the 40s to make sure that their husbands can get in.
Whoops. Somebody forgot a cell phone here. Somebody forgot a cell phone. Huh. Amazing. I didn't even know there had been a cell phone that had been forgotten here.
Yeah. Things happen.
Sorry.
It's okay.
It is
live radio, you know what? It's
live
radio.
It's live radio. Do you have any details about the birth, your birth, the way your mother gave?
I was born in a hospital in 1974. I was the third child. I was a fast birth, born at 8:30 in the morning. I got sent home within 3 days. I was a kid that snored right away.
Wow.
A little baby that would snore, and they and I remember going back to my house, leaving the hospital, and being in a red Volkswagen Bug with my mom holding me and my brother in the back, and actually being welcomed into the house. And then being brought into my room and everybody fawning around me. And then there are other memories of a blue refrigerator that I'd be put into a high chair in front of. They'd be feeding me, and everyone would be running through and out. I mean, all those memories are a stream for me because I have actively gone back to the 0 point in the fetus and removed my own mental programming that I learned from my mother, my father, and my two brothers, and my grandfather and grandmother.
But you were a joy for your mother.
Exactly.
Yeah, you've carried that in your voice. Sometimes if you're with a person for 5 minutes, you can sense how much this person has been invited to be part of this earthly experience. Just that. If I could have one wish, let everybody who is conceived be wanted. Whoa, you already have half of the prisons gone and half of the psychiatric hospitals. The sense of being, that core center of beingness, that allows you to just be you instead of just worrying about what the others are doing. Be you. That centeredness is gold.
When people know in their hearts that somebody else is holding space and love for you, even when you cannot return that space and love for them, is gigantic in their dark night of the souls.
Yes. And the resiliency that is so well talked about now in neurophysiology comes from there. That little kernel of self-esteem that starts growing, that this is fantastic. You are resilient. Things will happen to the likes of you, but you come back up to your position. You don't spend many months trying to recover. You just
as a child, I experienced some traumas. I broke my neck at a very young age.
Wow.
And it wasn't diagnosed until I was in my 20s, and I had an X-ray. And they looked at my neck and said, "How do you walk?" So I'm a bit of a living miracle when you look at my X-rays. But my child was very, very different. So you really, to compare my childhood to a lot of the other childhoods because of the experiences I had on the psychic nature. And I remember being, 7, 8, and 9 years old and being able to sit into my mind and go to any part of the universe or be here in the Akashic record of our world and follow it all the way back to the beginning and figure out what it all meant.
Yeah, this is beautiful to have access to the Akashic records. Now, if you would speak to a room of 100 people from United States, kind of a gathering from many states, people between 25 and 35 years old, what would you tell them? What would be your main advice regarding inviting somebody to Earth?
If they're going to be a couple and they're intending to invite a child together, the first thing they must do is practice spiritual cleanliness for each of themselves, which is self-healing and self-nurturing on your schedule. 2, you must own your schedule in your heart. When you're working 40 hours a week and you come home, work does not come home with you. That must be in the very beginning foundation so that when you're ready to invite the child after a deeply sensual experience that leads to a sexual experience afterwards, that is where your minds intertangle in Kundalini, and that is where you can have intense moments of communication to spirits if one person of the male-female concept is holding space at the heart so the other can allow the experience while their hand is in and around the sacred feminine areas, or vice versa, in and around the sacred masculine areas. The masculine sperm enters the feminine vagina in a spiritual process as well as a mechanical process. And as that sperm is racing towards there, the energy of the sperm and the energy of the egg are acting in their own magnetic concept and are searching for a specific frequency soul. Each sperm is doing that.
It does depend on who the parents are, way before even conceiving.
Right. That's your DNA lineage, your mother and father and your mother and father before them and their mother and father before them.
It goes beyond the DNA. There's the
It goes back to the founding DNA lineages who created the original DNA memories because our DNA is technology. We wear DNA skin suits to have matter to psychic experiences where we can manifest our light bodies into these physical bodies.
We cannot manufacture that in a 1-hour relationship.
Nope.
It takes some being together in consciousness, the very conscious couple, way before the conception.
Exactly.
That vibration that is going to attract or invite or welcome a soul, which is a huge program. The couple energy needs to exist, to be established, at least some of it, because otherwise we would have to wait to be 94 to have a baby.
Mm-hmm. And, the additional experience, when I say spiritual cleanliness, it's more than just sage stick and intention. It's looking at your home and realizing that chaotic clusters of energy build up. It's not just your pile of work on your deck or the grass that's not cut outside. It's the dust. It's the windows. It's the people who come in and out. It's the way you come in and out. It's knowing that energies will build up and wait for you to sit back down into them before they impress into you again other worries, other pains, other concepts. Spiritual cleanliness takes this at the root of the foundation and makes sure that your home is your sacred space. So when you put your hand on that doorknob, there is not negative energy waiting to be transferred into you because you left it there or your partner left it there.
Correct.
As you walk into that door, sacred space means your pericardium allows the heart to say, I trust this space enough to let down and separate into this reality bubble.
Your language is exquisite. You have chambers in your heart. There are 4 of them. And the space, the sacredness of the space. And many people I see are searching for new rituals. My wish would be that everything becomes a ritual, that I don't brush my teeth or say goodbye to somebody at the market without making that moment a moment of consciousness. Life is a constant ritual, a constant opportunity for communion.
Absolutely.
Now, when you step into a ritual mode, what about when you step out of it? What are you? Not in ritual anymore? That ground is sacred and not that one?
Right.
So
Every moment is.
every moment can be. You wish to find a communion with life. It can be right now and here through live radio and.
You were saying ritual. The next level of ritual is ceremony. And any couple who's going to bring a child into the world should understand that ritual, just as Laura just described, also goes into a moment where there's ceremony. And what ceremony is where you take the sacred space that you've built inside yourself and allow your whole property to be a part of that sacred space. So you're just not locked inside your home. We as human beings weren't meant to be locked inside of homes. We're meant to be in the rest of the world. Okay,
yeah,
for those people.
The Chilean poet says that our earth is our home and the cosmos our garden.
Yep, cosmos is our garden, exactly. Get out there and plant some flowers. You know, the next thing is when it comes to, I've counseled many, many women who have been on fertility drugs for a long time, and they have some horrendous effects on them. And as soon as they start detoxing and get off it, and I've had incredible success with them doing ritual and ceremony that clears their sacred feminine and clears their bonded sacred masculine through a ceremony called talking to the fire. It's where they get to the concept that that fire is a friend they haven't seen in 40 years. They've created a sacred space around it, whether it's an indoor or an outdoor fire, and they tell their whole story to that fire. And it could take a while, sometimes a few hours or a few days for you to actually challenge yourself, how far back can I go? I'll tell you how far I went during these fire ceremonies. I went all the way back to the 0 point of the fetus in mother's womb hundreds and hundreds of times. And it's what gives me the skill to speak in the language that I do, not just on these topics, but the hundreds of other topics that I do.
Yes. Yes, because we are universal entities, microcosmos. Mm-hmm. And at the origin was fire. Yes. Yep.
Fire of creation. Fire was the first shaman that taught us warmth when the ice mountains came, and we couldn't feed on flowers anymore because they were passing on, and that's where we took to flesh. It's where our spirit communicated to the antelope clans, and the antelope clans came down and taught us lessons. They taught us the lessons that you will take the flesh because it is our service to you. This is the nature of this world. Everything is of service to you. The fish on your dinner plate, it is experiencing your life in your intestinal tract for that 48 hours that you are eating it. And that time that it's caught and shipped, it's experiencing the fisherman's life. When it's sitting in the grocery store, it's experiencing every person that's watching it. It is a part of the web of life. Do not think that it had been taken from its experience by you eating it.
And then you can ask that very food you're eating by, of course, greeting it and saying, would you please tell my cells, teach them your understanding of the universe. A carrot, a fish, a lettuce will have different ways of expressing their intelligence, and they were able to capture from the 4 elements surrounding an extraordinary amount of elements. Like, it's not the same thing to be a tomato or a carrot or a fish. How did they know how to grow? Can they teach that to ourselves? And then we tell ourselves, hello, food is coming. Prepare yourselves to greet this new arrival because it is us and we are who they are. And now life becomes interesting when we think like that.
Mm-hmm. And it's all in the water. All in the water. We're 86% water. Life, the messages of life, all in the water. Let's talk about the water in the fetus, in the fetus sac.
Well, there is something, though, that I have to say that is less joyous, but all our toxic fertilizers and pesticides, they come from plastic. They imitate in our body estrogen. They're estrogen mimicking. So our amniotic fluid is like a sea of estrogens. Now try to evolve in that if you're a little boy, because it's essentially a feminine hormone. They are not estrogen, but they mimic it. So our lack of respect to our Mother Earth, what we have not known how to embrace in our earth, now we're paying it in our very womb. The industrialization of birth, which is a catastrophe, has followed a parallel road to the industrialization of agriculture. Once it's not the hand anymore of the farmer that sows the grain, then we look at all this artificial insemination. What would you say, Andrew, of those procedures that impose on an egg a sperm?
I have talked a number of times about artificial insemination, and when it comes to that, it is a spiritual hijacking process. Because of the industrialization and the types of spiritual contracts mothers and fathers create when they donate sperms and egg in love and lovingness. But ultimately, those people that own those eggs, because our system owns it once they've given a capital letter name, and they are now energy for the system of our world, it's a way to hijack or bring in babies or spirits who are not ready in the rapid reincarnation process. We live in the school of hard knocks and the beauty in the Garden of Eden, okay? It is what you make it. We consciously manifest our own reality. Why? It's just the nature here. It's the reality of this world is very, very different than many other worlds. Our birthing experience is so different than many other worlds. You know, we are here on Earth, natural order, natural birth. I was born in the womb of a sacred feminine, and that is my ancestral lineage to this planet Earth, who is the mother of all feminines who give all birth, and she functions through the 13 grandmothers, those original 13 women who came here to make sure the lessons of birth are always remain in the feminine DNA.
True, but even before that, we also have in the schools of ancient mysteries that at the very beginning, all of us were hermaphrodites. We would have both of the genitalia.
Actually, there were 5 different sexes in the early Lemurian era around 51 to 54 million years ago.
This is correct. And then men were the ones giving birth.
Energy birth, because this is me. I've talked about this quite a few times. So you have a male and a female and a third sex. The third sex is hermaphrodite, and the fourth sex is what brings in energy concepts from a solar system. You have a mother and father, let's say a male and two bonded people. They could be women and women, and they can go to this fourth sex concept and engage in a sensual ritual, not sexual, in which their energies are highly raised, and that third partner, through his heart, can reach into the solar gate of the sun and then connect to any other solar system in the universe and begin a search in connection with the two bonded people that are with them for a spiritual egg, and that person represents the spiritual sperm, and there's a tube that brings them together through the solar system and brings them to the astral world of here, and that's when they determine what prisms of light each being is using. There's ray technology. We are 7-ray experiencing beings, and if a being is coming here as a 2-ray experiencing, its light body must be upgraded by this being that's consciously birthing it into this reality by sharing its reality rules, and that being, that energy being, will come into the heart of that fourth sex person and then be birthed out of their heart as an energy being and handed to the two bonded people, and then it goes through the birthing process of a male and a female, where the energy is put into the woman's womb, then they go through the sexual ritual, it bonds to the fetus egg, and it's a direct incarnation separate of the rules here.
Yes. This is fascinating studies. You have gone really further than most people I've ever met. And have you had a glimpse of what comes next? Because
yes. After the child is born, that energy, that being that's passed off, and then goes through.
How babies will be conceived in the next era. If we do well, this one here, that's why we are here on this radio talk show, we will then step into a next phase where the chakra of the men and women's union will be the throat chakra, and we will be able to give birth through that chakra to a being, a boy or a girl, already kind of 7 years old. I have those informations from Omram, Mikhail Abenhoff, that Bulgarian teacher.
Yes, that is a phase of technology for a certain group of lineage people who have gone through the constriction of the throat chakra energies. Different soul family groups have been given different burdens to learn from. And for those that are vocal species, that they live as living sound before they took a human body, they will express a change through that way. There's 10,000 different species amalgamated into our DNA here, and over 3,800 different light body DNAs here. So there's going to be a tremendous variance. So when you're asking me what do I see zones or areas around Earth that are fertility spots that people will go to get pregnant and to give birth. And there'll be rapid transit technology, so if somebody is living in another part of the planet and is going through the birthing process, they can rapidly go to the other birthing place and not have a massive shift of energy, because there's additional technology that the women wears that constantly grounds her into reality. These are like grounding pads that are built into your shoes, into your lower back, as well as the entire process of the pregnancy is overseen by energy cleanliness specialists, so that the baby, when it's growing, can communicate to the mother, the father, and then the parents and the grandparents, and be introduced to the ancestors before birth, so that in the birth canal forgetting phase, there is beings holding space of those memories. So when the child is born, within a year it is speaking. Within a year and a half, it could probably even draw pictures. Within 2 years, it's teething, its teeth are full, and it'll begin the beginning of change of innocence, where it'll be the rest of the ancestors and environment and culture that will teach them how to not program themselves of limitations.
Interesting. I remember saying, what you're saying is of the utmost relevance, Andrew. I don't think most of our listeners have been acquainted with that kind of information. But still, from the Theosophical Society, there was a couple who wrote a book, Cosmic Cradle, showing us that from the beginning of time, families have met their little ones before even conceiving them, in dreams, in visions, in stories. It's a very good book already as an introduction to that that phenomenon, how are souls attracted to couples on Earth. It's very interesting. But thank you. I am very, very fond of the sacredness of breastfeeding. What would you tell us about that?
First thing first, anyone that is going to breastfeed has to know that you've had to have detoxed your body before you're breastfeeding, before you were pregnant. What is detox? Heavy metals. Makeup, heavy metals. Paint, heavy metals.
DDT, all the pesticides that I ate.
All of that stuff. And the next thing is, if you were ever on anything like Zoloft or any of those other depression drugs, lithium, it's very, very important that you realize that your breast is a reflection of you for that baby. You are holding space, and you are doing alchemy to create milk like every other feminine being here on this world, including the cattle and the cats and the dogs. They all produce something that is a essence, the essence of you, that is linked to your shoulders and to your heart and to your chakras of your throat and your solar, so that when the baby is in position, it is in the intonation and vibration to receive your essence, which is the alchemy of milk.
Wow. Milk. The Milky Way. They say the right breast with the Milky Way. I remember we mentioned that. It's a quiet evening. The mother is breastfeeding. To remember our relationship with the universe. Yes,
it is the time where you should be in meditation with the baby. Yeah. Why? Because that's what the baby is telling you. I'm feeding on the nipple of infinity that you are creating in this alchemy. Come join me.
Yes, and having formulas for wisdom and for love.
Yep.
At the time we give the right and then the left breast, sometimes not in the same.
The baby is not always taking. It is always giving you infinite love.
Always.
Always. And when we connect to that, we are in the communion of union.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. They promote us. They upgrade us, our children, to a state of gods and goddesses. And we don't deserve that rank, but for them, we are it. And that brief amount of time when they're tiny and babies and we are gods for them is a very potent, transformational time for who we are. Provided we embrace the path of growth, spiritual growth, few engines could be more potent than our babies. No wonder initiation was for men and women who were having children, and that was our initiation, that constant giving to receive the light.
That's right. Giving and receiving. So I got a question for you, and it's about the birthing process. When that baby is coming down the birthing canal, this is in my perspective that I view this universe from. That is where the great forgetting comes. And in that forgetting, it's the contraction from one reality to this reality and to the welcome of the ancestors who are the physical beings and the goodbye to the ancestor who are the non-physical beings. And we go through the great sleep, and then our eyes awaken as the sack is torn and we're pulled out, and we see this world for that first moment in unawareness of our infinity, but knowing infinity is within a few moments because we don't know time yet.
Yes, infinity and eternity. In between 2 seconds, there is eternity. Yes, so what is your question?
When does time start get taught to our children, to those babies? Because time is a social agreement.
It is a social agreement, though we have an area, specialized area in our brain that matures way after birth. Mm-hmm. And that will give us a sense of time and space. Including, even if you want to play Scrabble, you need time, you need to wait your turn, and you have space. You cannot write in diagonal, you'll write horizontal or vertical. If you go with people who had like a stroke, that area of the brain, although they're in their 60s, can be wiped out, and they can lose time and space, which the little one does not have. So I see time and space, the linear time and space, as a construct of our neurophysiology that, of course, culture exaggerates upon it. Because we never lose timelessness.
Exactly.
The sense of infinite. But our culture does never foster that. So I think we need both. If you take an airplane or you build a computer, you might be in need of both time and timelessness, space and infinity, and beyond. Mm-hmm. So it is around and you know, a newborn cannot wait. You cannot say, wait, my love, just putting on this shirt. They will scream as if you were going for 6 months, going away for 6 months. And it's just about 60 seconds. And we are not born with it, it's true. But our brain has a special area for it.
Okay. Our parents imprint onto us the first neural pathways of time, the first neural pathways of what a mother and father is. And that is what every human being can share with every other human being out there. No matter what the parents were going through at that time, they are impressing onto you this reality, this initial reality function. And as the child sleeps and goes into dream world and re-enters the dream world and re-enters the infinite world, because that's what children are doing. They're sleeping, eating, pooping, and loving at all times. And there are times they're fully awake and they're fully dreaming at the same time. You can just look at the baby and know. Oh,
the dream state stays for years. I see the Steiner schools. They only think that the dream state recedes when the first teeth are coming, the adult teeth are growing. You start losing your baby teeth. So that's the dream state, including the zone. The brain waves will be very distinct when the child tells you a story. It's not like if he were or she were 15 years old. They're 3 or 4. The story is different for them.
Mm-hmm. And that's ultimately what brings to the loss of innocence for each child, as this reality in its pleasant harshness begins to awaken them from the great sleep, and the dream world ends, and this semi-pubescent concept comes into play before hormones take over and lead them into the male-female expression, which is where many children who have taken impressions from their own mothers and fathers and people that are around them, and it's where their sex mind is confused by education and media. And that's why so many people are confused on sexual concepts.
Yeah, as far as sexuality, I don't know if you have heard of this research. They practiced research on the bodies, the corpses of lesbians and gays, and just to see if there were some area that would be different. And lo and behold, there is an area near the hypothalamus that gets formed in our pre-birth time, just in the last weeks of pregnancy. Of course, the child will not need sexual attraction before that. So you understand that it's a little late in pregnancy that this will be formed. Of course, the genitalia is at the very beginning being built, formed. But our sexual attraction zone in our brain, because it's not just gays and lesbians, there's so many other possibilities to be attracted sexually. To know the importance of the well-being of the pregnant woman in the last weeks, 4 last weeks of pregnancy, how paramount this is. If you don't have that oxytocin that flows with the well-being, you'll have all those catecholamines, all these hormones of the family of adrenaline, and they are contrary to growth and development in the womb. One of the reasons why chronic stress is so detrimental during pregnancy is that it prevents the very cells and tissues to develop the way they're supposed to, and they start being in defensive mode. They grow much less, they spend much less energy, and of course one day to deal with chronic stress, you have a lesser person. In Cornell University, Peter Nathaniels says anybody can louse up a Shakespeare. I mean, you can have a brilliant genetic material, but if the amount of stress, of adrenaline, the absence of growth fostering hormones is there, that absence will make for a much lesser capacitated baby. You are not having the being you conceived. You're having a being who already has changed his way of being to obey to your perception of life. That is, life is a tragedy. It's a horror. We have to protect ourselves. We go on defense mode, like a country that would only go for the military versus another country that wants to expand its culture and exchange with other nations. It's so heavy. If we could embrace this cause and invest in infant structure, that would be fantastic. The first nation that will do it, just because of the vanity of their politicians perhaps, will be one of the major examples for the others.
It's the adrenal gland overactivity that puts people into that exact description of what you were saying.
Yeah.
And it's in our food and our water, it's in our media, and it's in our training, and it's in our programming to be over-sexual, under-sexual, overstimulated, unstimulated, over-hormoned or under-hormoned. And it's rare when a male and a female come together and their frequencies of hormones match.
Interesting.
Okay. And now our culture, our cultural taboos, and the things we don't like to talk about, which is where conflicting belief systems amongst mothers and fathers create the greatest tragedy in raising children. Yes, it is true. How was it for you, that first sexual encounter, first sexual attraction? How did you feel? How were you moved? Oh, as a very young kid, watching television, whenever there was something on the TV that was like a kissing scene, or even just regular plain TV, it was nothing spectacular, I had to leave the room. Because you would feel. I feel it in everyone in the room, in the television, and then everyone. I was an extreme empath. I mean, I'm a very different person growing up. Like the neighbors, like I had, we lived on a cul-de-sac. I could feel every neighbor in the neighborhood. There was well over 100 of them, and everyone has 3-acre lots, so it's not a small area. I mean, I was able to project my mind and help other people who were having nightmares. As a kid, I mean, I remember sitting in my high chair having yogurt stuffed in my mouth and my body going shaking that I didn't want it in my mouth, and spitting it out. And then as I spit it out, one of the people that I had helped psychically just came in there, what was going on. And as a little kid, I'm putting this all together going, huh? Trying to be in this world and be in the other world at the same time. So I learned to live in both simultaneously.
Yeah, but also, did you know that the other adults around you were not able to do what you were doing? Because this is one of the major difficulties for the psychic children. They don't realize that others are not seeing auras, they're not aware, they're not empaths.
I had a distinct moment when I was 4 years old, and I remember coming in from outside, and I was, when you close your eyes, you see colors. I would see sacred geometry that would have depth behind it and would have language in it, and I would tell my mom I'm seeing it. And after a while, like a week or so of me saying it, she said, "It doesn't exist. It's not real. Put your hands on your eyes and say it's not real and go away."
Oh, my goodness.
So, and I remember, and it went away for a really long time. And I remember how painful it was because it was my mother enforcing denials of Egypt to me.
Yeah, denial. You chose her, though. So that experience made you more resilient. Her opposition made your certainty grow. How did it function?
I grew up in a restaurant family, so I started work at a very young age. Many hours a week, drinking coffee at 6 years old. So having to be at work at 4 o'clock in the morning on the weekends when I wasn't in school, or going to the different restaurant functions, 30, 40, 50, 60 hours a week at times, and still have to do high school or junior high. So a different life, again, a very, very different life. And I've done a tremendous amount of healing on it with my own family. I love them very much. They can't listen to my work. I've been doing this for many, many, many years. My mom has listened to less than 1 or 2 shows. Same with my other brothers. They simply can't. They know me, and they know what I was like growing up with me, and they just couldn't conceive of what it is that I was doing. I mean, in their own rights, they did it exactly the part that they were supposed to do, to teach me very valuable lessons as a child when I grew into an understanding of the responsibility of what I had. And that was the specific skill to read the Akashic record of not just this world, but 20,000 other worlds. I'm simultaneously linked into all forms of information and can simultaneously translate it.
This is beautiful. Let's go back, Andrew, to your first sexual attraction. How did it work in your body? Because you were so tuned.
Physical or non-television?
Non-television, when you felt a trance of that kind of attraction, perhaps didn't even touch her genitalia, but your person to whom you would say yes as a compliment.
Probably I was 14, right around 13, 14, let me think. I'll actually look at the Akashic record of myself. 14, just turned 14, and it was a girl in school, and I remember having an intense connection to her, but me not wanting to be an empath and read her mind because I had very strict rules with myself of not reading the minds of others, because sometimes you get into some very dirty sections and there are things that you don't want to see.
Yes.
Okay, so it would be between reading and homeroom class, first period, an intense heart bond. Like, oh my God, I've known this person forever, and like there was these intense sexual experiences from other lifetimes that were flowing through.
And it was extraordinary. It was scary. It was. How did
I was a very private child, so no one understood what was going on in my world. No one knew. So, yeah, I held it in, and that's part of the programming that I grew up with. You don't tell anyone what's going on.
Yeah, you're better.
Yeah, so I kept it all inside. And then there were a number of other experiences with other people because, when you're working in the restaurant industry and you're taking the money, you're making their food, you're connected to them as they leave.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have this thing called 1 degree of separation. That's everybody you've ever met in your life, including the people you've walked by on the street or passed in a car. All of those are 1 degree of separation. And if you look at the world, everybody has a 1 degree of separation. Like your 1 degree of separation is big because you do interviews, you do books, same with mine. There would mean less than 200 of us can complete a unity consciousness grid around the world. And as a child growing up, I was looking for that in every piece of food that I sent out, or every money that I exchanged for the food. I looked at that person and tracked them all the way back in their DNA lineage to determine how far I could reach and change this world.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can. Yep. And you really can. I remember once having a lecture of Om saying that one of the things that happens when we die, we realize how many people we have killed and how many people we have saved in their lives. And we will say, no, of course not. I've never known these people. Oh, but you were in that street and your mind was this and that and that. And that was enough. You were filled with gratitude and thankfulness. And that deflated the minds of those robbers in the corner who were about to assassinate a person just because
exactly.
of the purpose. And you are responsible for that life being saved. And the reverse, if you were cursing and walking through the night all alone, you were bringing down the level to what they exactly needed to commit a crime, and you contributed to that crime. So that 1 degree of separation is perfect image. And then we have all those that are linked to the same wavelength who are on the other side of the planet, yep. who are perhaps asleep in their body and visiting us and listening to information and studying what it is to be alive. But a child really is not free, and they have to conform so early. And
exactly.
What a pity. What a pity. And babies are not really here still. They have parts of their past lifetimes are right there. They have adult way of seeing things. Not every baby's cutesy and adorable. They sometimes have the gravitas of an older person.
Oh, yeah. And there are other times that a soul that has gone into a baby and actually has been born, it'll leave, and another one will come in and take over for the rest of the life.
True. It happens a lot with anesthesia also.
Yeah.
Adult life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was recently, last week, I was in Sao Paulo, staying at a house with friends, and there was there a family with a baby, a 10-month-old baby, very healthy, very nice girl. But why was she complaining about that not growing fast enough body? She wanted to speak. It wasn't fun for her. She would eat looking at you saying, see, I'm doing this because I know that I'll get my body at least to walk and talk. And it's not an easy process. So all the calmness a mother can give, all the serenity, all the communion with life a mother and a father can offer a baby will go a long way, easing the process of that entity whose instrument, physical body, is not quite ready. Now, during pregnancy, I don't know why nature gave so much power to the mother. I know that conception is much linked to the father. The mother is totally open, black earth, fertile earth. But once ejaculation happened, there is a change of the roles, and the mother has it 100%. Even with an exquisite father, if it doesn't go through the mother, that body will be formed according to her visions of life. Thank goodness there's a soul of the baby working with the soul of the mother, and the soul is not a baby. It's just a soul that will one day inhabit.
The father, by the natural birth orders of Earth, which is being born of a sacred feminine, does have a place and an influence over the growth of that baby. In our cultural today, it does not show that in any way. The man is forbidden in some scenarios other than seeing the baby just after birth, okay? And then there are many men who spend very little time with their pregnant wives or whoever, and that's absolutely vital that the men spends time there. The men should learn some basic hands-on energy healing techniques. There's hundreds of techniques out there. shoulder massage, hip massage, ankle massage. You can be every part of that experience.
Yes, nothing is more important for the mind of a pregnant woman than her relationship with the father of the baby. Thomas Vernis says that in his gorgeous book, Secret Life of the Unborn Child. It has been observed, but it's interesting, is what he does to the mother that nourishes most the baby. It goes by three. And the father holding the mother up there in admiration, in tenderness, in quietness. You see, society also should come up and be able to devise places. I remember this was one of the dreams of Omram. Let the government spend lots of money for parks, beauty, flowers, trees, and fountains, statues, and places of well-being where the pregnant mothers can enjoy the synergy between their pregnant bellies. And but all kinds of mothers, not just the beautiful, the perfect ones with enough money to pay this and that, all of them, from the very rich to the very poor, to have their communion with life, with nature, with beauty, with inspiration, and amongst themselves. That would enhance extraordinarily the level of health in a country, mental health and physical health. And I think it will happen. We're doing it so poorly, so badly. To be born like we're born in America, in Vietnam, in Brazil, is so artificial. We're paying a huge toll for that artificiality. And women work too much. They don't know how to rest. A woman who's pregnant is in charge of a gorgeous mission. How can we treat her as a person who's not pregnant?
Exactly. There are plenty of jobs that they can do that keep their mind active, but sometimes those jobs that they do are destructive to the baby, like filing paperwork. That's why is that baby being exposed to all of somebody's credit reports or whatever, your accounting, I mean, some dirty jobs, psychically dirty jobs.
I love it that you're being so clear about that. It's toxic to the baby because it's toxic to beauty.
Yes.
It's toxic to brotherhood on earth.
I was asked the other day in one of my private readings, what is the most dangerous job in the world? From my perspective as the galactic historian who sees energy cleanliness frequently, what do you think the most dangerous job in the world is?
I have no idea. To be a mother, certainly to be a parent.
No.
More...
Believe it or not, it's actually tech support from computers.
Oh, explain.
You are constantly in the clashing belief system of people who grew up in the 50s, 60s, or 70s who did not have computers, who are trying to forcibly learn it in many different parts of their psychic body, are attacking the tech support person.
Wow.
And that is the worst position for a pregnant mother in help support. Do not do it. You're risking the health of your baby and everyone around you if you are.
Wow. That's the most dangerous job?
Absolutely.
I think that to be a mother is the most dangerous thing for a baby, in the sense that it's so easy to go wrong. But now you're saying, okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah, as a job when you're pregnant.
Yeah.
That is my advice, do not do tech support when you're pregnant.
Yeah, our job is to celebrate life when we are pregnant. And by the way, the same process of pregnancy occurs all the time within our bodies. Mm-hmm. The two of us are pregnant of ourselves for next week and next month. Mm-hmm. We're constantly rebuilding our organs. Our cells are dying and others are being born. We have an opportunity of renewal in our very physical body all the time. Our very DNA can be perfected. Some genes can be silenced. Others can be awakened. Even others can be created. Everything is so plastic. It's so possible. The new cell biology, I remember the book of Bruce Lipton, Spontaneous Evolution, delightful book that he wrote with a friend of his who's an economist. We see now the plasticity of every cell in our body. So we do not need to go by what we have received, even genetically. We are not slaves of our DNA. Epigenetics has come to the rescue, let's say. For the baby in the womb, yes, but also for ourselves. We need to repattern and reparent ourselves. That would be an extraordinary exercise, especially with somebody like you, Andrew, who can see the Akashic records and the real purpose why we are undertaking this adventure in being human beings. So it goes a long way, the pregnancy story. Our mind and what we carry in our hearts really will determine some part of our physicality for tomorrow and the day after. So we are responsible.
Absolutely. We are at the top of the hour, Laura. Let's take a break here, and everyone can get a drink. And when we come back, we will get into some of the nitty-gritty here. We have had an incredible first hour. Thanks much. And hold on, everybody. We'll be back after the break. welcome back, everybody, to New Earth Nation Radio. And we have Laura Uplinger here. This is your host, Andrew Bartzis. We want to remind each and every one of you, New Earth Nation is going to be having an incredible Sacred Feminine webinar on June the 7th, 2014. So I want you to check out newearthnation.org and come and look at this incredible lineup. We're going to be having Laura Uplinger, Margot Anand, and many, many, many others who are going to be talking the power of the Sacred Feminine. And with this show that we're having today, we're talking about conscious birthing, and we have got into some deep subjects. And over on the break here, Laura and I were talking about the death to birth and the rebirth cycle, that she wanted to go a little bit more into this to help people understand the processes that we go through as human beings. Welcome back, Laura. So which angle did you want to go in the life and death process?
Well, hello. Yes, Andrew, a person dies. There's a time to kind of digest and assimilate this whole experience here. Our soul needs this experience here on Earth, and there will be a time where it's time to come back, and we choose, or they choose for us, depends, where we're going to incarnate and with what purpose. Now, what could you tell us about the soul living an experience, let's say a good experience, a life well lived with a feeling of plenitude, fulfillment?
Well, the process from leaving the body will result into this tunnel or tube of light. There'll be those that step out of their body and go through a confusion process. There is no cookie-cutter way of dying. No. Each death is actually encoded into you from your last death and your death before that, so that when you go into your life review, which is similar to what we described before, where you're looking at all the different things, how 1 degree of separation has affected you, that is your body releasing the fetus energy that it needed to be bounded in the fetus when it's birthed, during its birthing process. And the death process is that original spark of soul DNA body energy that came into the fetus and allowed the anchorage of the soul to stay in there, begins to leave the body, and the body begins to go through its natural decay process on Earth, in which the Earth Mother absorbs that energy through whatever culture belief system that is you have. When one is in the life review process, they could still be standing in front of their body and still in the life review, experiencing all of their other parts of their life, this lifetime or other lifetimes, as well as meeting soul family members, because they are no longer this single-dimensional person. The body isn't the anchorage for that anymore of the finite concept, and fully they're embraced by the infinity, in which their ego transitions its purpose so that it can find the next layer of contractual resolution, whether we go as an incarnation or a reincarnation. An incarnation is where we take a whole new plan, we put aside reincarnation's plots and processes, and we directly with a group of people who we call soul family, so that we could have incredible experiences, such as just you said. So a good life, and you pass on, the soul family passes you on, there's a great mourning process, your life has gone through, you go into the other world, and guess what? You meet a whole other group of soul family who say, let's go to this experience here.
Yeah, it's like homecoming.
Yep.
There's an immense joy because
family reunion.
Limits, matter resists, and on the other side, we don't need
no resistance. Yeah.
And what about your curiosity, the things you started studying here on Earth? Do you go on? Will you go and visit the Akashic Records? Do you pursue some objectives? Do you still work on some themes that you were already working on here on Earth?
You can work on dozens of subjects simultaneously. Okay. The vast majority of beings that pass on, the first thing that they do is they're healing from the social agreement of time and the cultural taboos. And they spend a lot of time in regeneration chambers that allow them to go back and look at everything that's their 1 degree of separation from this last lifetime and many other lifetimes. And that's where this re-education process into our race memory comes back in, and we realize what the great forgetting of sleep does to us when we enter the physical world, and that we don't get to remember our past lives, and we see hundreds of past lives begin to have little bleed-through moments where your life course was changed because another version of yourself who was so in love with another being happened to have felt you in a dream world and steered you back towards that other being that they were in love with.
Yeah, that is very profound. I also heard we have an etheric double that will remain there. For instance, let's say that Beethoven is already back on this planet. But the Beethoven we understand and feel through his music can still receive our ovations, our questions, our love, as the Beethoven who was once. I mean, the soul goes on. There will be other ways of being dressed, other physical bodies, but it's not gone. That Beethoven who composed the Pastoral and the Ninth Symphony. Do you agree with that vision?
When a soul leaves something like Beethoven as a legacy to the world, that soul will ultimately have to will ultimately have to disentangle from that work. Otherwise, his future lives or their future lives will be continued to be entangled with the karma of the observers of that music. So what has happened is the muse that helped him create that music and that specific frequency, and the Akashic record takes over and allows it to pass generations, so the next generation can view the music and the composer, but the composer not to be directly affected in their future lifetimes because it's such a deep impact on people.
Correct. So that's what I was kind of saying. By there is an entity there who is not Beethoven anymore, but who was the
residual image.
The residual image, perfect. That would still be receiving and processing through with the muses, of course, and the guides, because it's so lively. It's
exactly. And there's all these other people putting energy so that it can continue to cross generations. And that's the soul family empowering stuff like that.
And when is the moment that they tell us, now you go back there?
What is the moment they tell us what?
That is enough time spent in between worlds that, again, not talking about a bodhisattva. I'm talking about a person who is on the path of evolution, of course, and who is told, go there. I heard that Beethoven had pushed to the latest possible moment to come back. He could have come in situations much easier than the ones he ended up coming. But Cyril thought...
I've not spoken about Beethoven publicly on air. It's a tough thing to realize that we have a social agreement of time, and there are other beings who really don't care about us, and they live on this world, and to us we are cattle, and something like Beethoven is a prize. And yes, he did wait a very, very long time, and there could have been other opportunities for him to come in early, but if he did, he would have been captured because he's such a bright soul. And there are beings who can review time from like remote viewing. They could be living in 700 AD or 7000 BC, and they could be remote viewing us, looking for other versions of themselves to take over.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing?
So Beethoven had to make sure when he came in he wouldn't be detected by those other beings who ultimately are doing what? Creating an environment of shame, blame, and guilt surrounded by propaganda, so we can no longer go back to our natural birthing orders, back to our natural order, living on the land, instead of being disconnected in the cities, disconnected from dream world, connected into materialism and consumerism, and not allowed to have a social structure that's a patriarchal dominated society, but a mutually accepted society, where equity and equality for all kind is the actual equity and equality.
Wow. That's profound.
It's very profound, and it's important that people understand that we are in a time where our belief system means everything.
Everything, and our very biology depends on that, and our very strength. I also heard in a different chapter of our lives, one of the reasons politicians so seldom come up with their promises once they're elected, it's because just the fact of revealing those plans and ideas woke up, of course, saboteurs from the inside, but also those entities you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Those entities can be quite nasty, and we are dealing with them at this point in our history. This is the end time. Just 1 second here. I'm going to read you something. This is another part of what I do. It's the teachings. It's called Spiritual Contract Revocations. And I've come up one for the Divine Feminine, which Hope Girl helped co-write with me, and the rest that I wrote myself. But the one I'm going to read is the one for the Sacred Feminine. And it is very, very powerful, and there has been a lot of women out there that have really, really liked this document. Just 1 second. Let me grab the latest one here. Wrong document here. Just a second. There we go. Now, some people in this radio show have heard me do this, but I want your perception of this. Okay, I call to all spiritual contracts that exist within my past, present, and future beings, selves, in existence in this dimension and time stream, and all time streams above and below the earth-centric sine wave of coexistence. At this exact moment, in the ever-present co-creating moment, I summon all DNA lineage ancestors to create a unified, proper spiritual court of equity, so I may find remedy and resolve with all contracts that have inserted fine print during the pre-birth and birth process. I call forth the proper spiritual court of equity to hear my decree of contract removal. I revoke all spiritual contracts with earth-based religions, cultures, belief systems, and industries that dominate and control the divine feminine power in our world and create an energetic imbalance that affects every man, woman, and child on this planet. I call forth all ancestors of all soul relations to hold space in the spiritual court of equity. I call to Mother Earth and all her light denizens within all inner and outer space to come forward and occupy the spiritual court of equity. O great mystery, who's the source of all power, I call to you. Come with your sacred synchronicities, so all beings may hold space with unity consciousness. I hereby revoke all contracts of all religions and cultural belief systems that place the feminine in a dominated position of inequality. These include the projections of unequal pay, the inability for a woman to earn a living, own lands or a business, or receive an education of her choosing. I do not consent to the feminist movement that was created and funded by the CIA to separate a woman from her divine feminine power, foster a hatred for men, and create a separation and division in the soul family unit. I hereby revoke all cultural belief systems that create the expectation of a woman's duty to hold an unrealistic burden alone and suffer in silence. I do not consent to all social policing systems that have been put in place to make a woman feel like she is too sensitive, too emotional, or out of control in the attempt at gaslighting a woman's soul to make her feel like she is unstable or insignificant. I hereby revoke all contracts of all cultural belief systems where female children are murdered at birth, sexually mutilated as a supposed rite of passage, sold off into billion-dollar child pornography industry, or trafficked as sex slaves. I do not consent to the porn industry that has been the breeding ground for sexual perversion, spiritual contracts, and the exploitation, degradation, victimization, and bastardization of the divine feminine power. I hereby revoke the following spiritual sexual perversion contracts that are targeted at separating a woman from her divine feminine power. All group sex and polyamorous programs that are all perversions of divine sexuality aimed at making a woman feel like she is somehow not enough. All double standards and cultural belief systems where recreational sexual promiscuity, multiple wives, harems, and mistresses are allowed and celebrated for a man, but cause social ruin for a woman. All programs that create projections that men put on women while masturbating, as well as perverted fantasies that are used as a barrier between the heart space of a man and a woman in a sacred sexual bond. I do not consent to these spiritual sexual perversion contracts. You have no power over me. I hereby declare that Earth Mother is now in dominion with me, as well as all of my soul family and ancestors. I declare I am now free from these projections of sexual perversion and return to the source of innocence as a divine feminine sovereign being. I hereby revoke all contracts and concepts created in innocence or blissfully ignorant states of being, I hereby declare a new form of spiritual and physical cleanliness. I revoke all previous self-created concepts of cleanliness and any perverted attachments to myself. Then this new invocation of cleanliness removes all previous concepts of sacred sexuality, sensuality, and recreational sex. I bring them all back to the 0 point of the fetus in mother's womb. I reconnect all my DNA strands to that of the heartbeat of Earth Mother. The sacred feminine is connected to her heart in her sacred feminine space and does not deny her menstrual cycle. She accepts it as a time of introspection, retrospection, and reflection. I hereby revoke all spiritual contracts with the entertainment and advertising industry that has created programs of self-hatred, low self-esteem, self-medication, self-mutilations, and eating disorders, and etc. I hereby revoke all spiritual contracts with the medical industry that have damaged a woman's health and ability to reproduce according to the natural laws of Earth Mother. Birth control drugs and other chemicals in our food and water and air that cause sterility or over-sexuality, as well as clothing that is damage to a woman's health, such as bras, heels, corsets, bound feet, and tampons. I hereby revoke all birthing contract created through C-sections, pregnancy drugs, prenatal x-rays, vaccinations, incubations, children who are not put on the mother's heart after birth, removal of the placenta, and cutting of the umbilical cord, which can stay intact for up to 4 days to allow for the child's heart bond with the mother and father. I revoke all contracts that force a woman to carry and birth a soul that is not of their co-created divine choice with a selected or bonded sacred masculine. This includes rape victims, teenage pregnancies, and forced and arranged marriages. I return to Earth and Earth Mother, the natural incarnation grid. I now permanently delete the reincarnation grid from my soul existence. I do not consent to all programs aimed at making a woman feel too fat, too thin, too old, too young, too black, too white, too ethnic, too rich, too poor, or any projection at all that makes a woman feel like she is somehow not good enough. I hereby declare that I am more than good enough. I am infinite consciousness. I am God, Goddess incarnate. I am a sovereign being, and I hereby reclaim my divine feminine power in this spiritual court of equity. I call forth all ancestors to honor this reading of my free will and enter it into the Earth Akashic record. For all sentient kind to understand, our freedom comes with the use of free will at all times.
Wow. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, thank you for reading it. Wow, you're the author. And, of course, the images that came to my mind. Wow. And especially throughout the ages, this has happened.
Yep.
And the very first ones to suffer were the men. If a man doesn't have a real woman by his side as a mother, as a sister, as a teacher, as a lover, who is this man? He's so thirsty for real things, and real with a capital R. And throughout the ages, we've had misery. I remember Bernard Lietard, one great friend of the New Earth Nation, great friends with Sasha. He is an economist from Harvard, MIT. When he talks big lectures on the sacred feminine, he says, if you want to know when the feminine is being respected in a town, in a civilization, you cannot find misery. If you find misery, you are sure that the feminine is not being respected. The nurturance of the other is part of the sacred feminine. From all of us, men and women, we have our masculine and feminine side. But it's interesting, as an economist from MIT, one of the fathers of the euro, misery will be an indication. And take a book of history. What you have been reading, what you read to us, echoes from way long ago.
Exactly.
Even didn't breastfeed his kids. His kids were not breastfed by their mother. It was a wet nurse. We have, it kind of became little, small, our dimension here on Earth. And it's not supposed to be so. That sovereignty you described so well is extraordinary.
I would like to read the one for the Divine Masculine, unless you'd like to read it. Everyone has a different experience when they read it. It's very similar to the one that you've read in the Divine Feminine. It's just written from the Divine Masculine part. Would you be game for trying that?
I would prefer to read it, but I want the voice of an author.
Okay.
It's so moving. But yes, you will please send me those two. Perhaps it can be available on the New Earth Nation.
It's available. All of these are available on my website. Just
Okay.
1 second. I'll actually send you the document here in just a second.
Okay.
I'm doing this live on air, and I shouldn't, but I'm going to.
Okay, I have it. Contract removal.
Yep,
So
yep,
good.
Yep,
Good.
contract removal. Santi's got it right there. I'll go ahead and read the Divine Masculine real quick. It's about the same length. So this is the soul contract revocation for the Divine Masculine. I call to all spiritual contracts that exist within my past, present, and future beings, selves, and existence in this dimension and time stream, and all time streams above and below the Earth-centric sine wave of coexistence. At this exact moment, in the ever-present co-creative moment, I summon all DNA lineage ancestors to create a unified, proper spiritual court of equity so I may find remedy and resolve with all contracts that have been inserted fine print during the pre-birth, birth, and puberty process. I call forth the proper spiritual court of equity to hear my decree of contract removal. I call forth all ancestors of all soul relations to hold space in this spiritual court of equity. I call to Mother Earth and all her light denizens with all inner and outer space to come forward and occupy this spiritual court of equity. O great mystery, who is the source of all power, I call to you, come with your sacred synchronicities, so all beings may hold space with unity consciousness. I call to Great Spirit who lives within great mystery, you, the powers of Mother Earth manifested, I call to your wisdom in this I am moment. Bless me as I walk this sacred soil. Bless me as I breathe your sacred air. Bless me as I warm myself with sacred fire. Bless me with your sacred waters of life. Bless me as I learn to walk with personal power. Today I travel the great unknown. Grant me the wisdom to be humble. Grant me the wisdom to love, even when love is not returned. Grant me the knowledge to balance my way of being, so I may heal my family, my tribe, my nation, and our Mother Earth. I am ready to invoke my natural rights as a sovereign male being born to Earth Mother through the womb of a sacred feminine who was also born this way. I invoke my natural rights as a being of Earth Mother. I was born under the natural laws. With this wisdom of my natural birth, I reclaim my place in the natural world. I revoke all energetic contracts with all people I've had sex with that was influenced by propaganda-based mass media or pornography. I return myself to the 0 point of the fetus in my mother's womb. I revoke all contracts with all perverted sacred masculine mystery schools who have operated with false information, who have created a patriarchal dominated society. I cancel, cure, or delete all contracts that pervert the sacred masculine during the birth canal phase of life. I revoke all spiritual contracts that create a sense of competition between the male species when dealing with any sacred feminine expression. I revoke all cultural taboos that create emotional distancing from women. I revoke all perverted spiritual contracts that place me in the incorrect sex that I chose before my birth. I revoke all spiritual contracts that create perversion of the male sensual expression of sensual behavior. I revoke all contracts that create perversion of the male sensual behavior. I revoke all contracts that house, hold, or store my sacred masculine energy to promote male-dominant sports, activities, or entertainment that demoralize or degrade the sacred feminine. I revoke all systems of patriarchal domination in the family unit. I return all definitions of family to Earth Mother, so remedy and resolve can be endeavored between all families now healing the patriarch concepts. I revoke all cultural contracts I incarnated or reincarnated with that create a male-dominated structure society. I return the sacred feminine to its right and proper place as equal partners in this co-creation experience of life. I revoke all spiritual contracts with all religions I have existed in that do not give full rights, duties, and responsibilities and total equity to the sacred feminine and masculine. I revoke all spiritual contracts that retain me in any way, shape, or form or force me via soul contract to serve in war. I delete all patriot programming that creates a lust for war. I revoke all spiritual contracts that define the male as war-oriented. I revoke all spiritual contracts with all governments that I have served with in all times of war. I revoke all spiritual contracts that create a war-based, male-dominated military-industrial complex. I revoke all contracts that create a male-serving, servicing sex industry that dominates women in any way, shape, or form. I revoke all spiritual contracts that create a sense of uncleanliness within my sacred masculine expression. I revoke all contracts that keep me trapped in shame, blame, or guilt created by perverted masculine or perverted feminine personalities. I revoke all contracts with the incubus and succubus grids I may have dealt with in all of my past, present, and future lives. I hereby banish the entire incubus and succubus grid from my reality for all of eternity. I hereby revoke my entire citizenship to all representations of kingship, dictatorship, religious monarchies, religious councils, or representative government concepts. I hereby permanently remove myself from all dreamtime societies interwoven with the system of domination and control that caused the erasure of our oral teachers and historians throughout the entire indigenous world. I hereby revoke every decision I have ever made while in service to the system of domination and control. All decisions made for me by soul contract holding representatives of government are now placed in a proper spiritual court of equity with all ancestors present, so we may find remedy and resolve, not justice or judgment. I now state with full sovereign conviction that I, Andrew Bartzis, am now fully present in the mighty I am self. I declare from this point forth I now operate with a permanent spiritual court of equity when relating to healing the divine masculine or feminine, so perversion never enters my field of expression. I hereby declare that Earth Mother is now in dominion with me for all forms of interpersonal relation, for all sentient kind existing and coexisting on Earth Mother's realm. I call forth all ancestors to honor this reading of my free will and enter it into the Earth Akashic record, for all sentient kind to understand our freedom comes with the use of free will at all times.
Oh, beautiful. No. I love that you finished with freedom.
Every time, freedom comes with the use of free will at all times, and that includes your natural birthrights. You have to use them. Have to use them.
It's one of the equations. And you mentioned competition. I remember I was young in the 70s or late 60s. Conrad Lawrence won the Nobel Prize for Medicine, and his book was On Aggression, denoting that aggression and competition had been the reason why we were able to build Manhattan and go to the moon. And it's interesting that within the same field of medical anthropology, they now say it's the reverse. It was our capacity of sitting around the fire and sharing stories and helping each other that gave us the strength to build Manhattan and go to the moon. Is the collaboration between all that is our strength, our wealth here. For the
our
world.
Abundance.
Our abundance. It's a very interesting. It's so good to break those contracts, to revoke those allegiances. And we can do that so many times a day, to revoke allegiances that just make us look so flat.
Or the conflicting belief systems that ultimately prevent you from following the natural way.
Yeah.
How many mothers do you know are conflicted in the way they want to raise their children just because they have to have a job?
Yes, but this have to have has many causes.
Exactly.
And sometimes they feel that intellectually they need their job, forgetting that to be with a child is a job. But it was never done. So we do not have a human experience to lay back on, to remember how it was in ancient, that country or the other. As soon as a family was wealthy enough, others would take care of their children. This has come from millennia. The only ones who had to were the ones who did not have enough money or social power. So we are now breaking, a few of us, but the number is growing, breaking that rule. You can be a doctor, have a doctorate, a PhD, and spend 7-10 years with your children without stepping in an office again.
Exactly.
Life will be there for you when you need to go back, when you want to, when life takes you, and it will be a very different you. You will have grown. Life never forgets those who serve life.
Exactly. It never forgets. That's why I said at the very beginning of the show, what did you recommend? Self-healing, self-nurturing, schedule management. Own your schedule.
Own your schedule. Step down. Have one less car, one less pair of shoes. You will pay less taxes also. But move cities. Change something. Because to have a child and say, bye, baby, I'll see you this evening, day after day after day, you're just buying your separation. And when that baby is 18 years old, it will hurt. It will hurt because the child will look at you with tenderness, but the communion will have gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
That you've lost that slice of innocence growing up and your connection to it when they're no longer innocent.
And you let your child with people you would not even have the pleasure of having breakfast with.
Exactly.
So I'm not against many people around children, but I know that a privileged person allows for that special bonding, not just with the person, but with life and with oneself. On the other hand, and as important as, a child can never be the center of the life of a woman. She needs to have her own center, and the child be her satellite, in the sense that if I see a parent of mine with a center, I know that when I grow up, I'll have a center too. So it's our relationship with life, our centeredness that counts. If I lose it and center my emotional life on a child, it's a burden for that child. The child says, whoops, mom does not know. How come I'm in charge here? I'm the center of her life. So this is a very tricky point. Abraham fell into that trap. That's why he was asked to kill his son. And of course, he didn't have to kill the son at the end. He had somehow walked away from his own centeredness, which is between his heaven and his earth, his thoughts and his actions, his divine purpose and his manifestation here on earth. That's one example the Bible gives. Not even a child should take us away, especially not a child, from this being one with life at our core. Then we can shine as much as we want. And the child will be a sunshine herself throughout life.
Absolutely.
It makes sense, Andrew?
Absolutely, it does. And it goes back into this rainbow concept of the fifth world of peace, where the rainbow warriors step forward and express all seven colors of expression, and no one person is unequal to anyone else. Where all forms of equity and equality are understood at the heart space level. And our society finishes its transformation and healing by realizing the patriarchal and matriarchal concepts come back to equity and equality through the birthing experience and through the raising experience. It's how we get back to the fundamentals of being human, separate of the city and the taxes and all those other things that the system of domination and control enforces on us, because we've created it over hundreds of years. We created the industrial society. Yes, there were people at the top that made it go crazy and did lots of horrible things, but at the same time, we could have rose up at any point in time. Pitchforks and torches changed the world for millions of years, okay? A pitchfork and a torch. And it could have been done, and it could have been done, and it could have been, it wasn't. So we are here now with this legacy, okay? And that equity is a way that God will come down and view man, not in judgment, but in equity. It's in the Bible all over, the word equity. It's a concept that was created as a separate court system in London, in England in the 14 and 1500s, where common law was so corrupt, the rules it was impossible for a person to get a fair trial. So they created courts of chancellery equity based off the original way deals were done in the barter system around the world before the over-concepts of religions took over and enforced a banking system.
Okay. Yeah, I had sent your words. Yeah. Can you explain equity? I wanted to have it more present, yes.
Equity is the way in which human beings exchange energy, and understand that a cow for a sheep can have an energy exchange if there's something that balances the frequency of the two beings, not only the sheep and the goat or whatever, whether it's grain or this, there's a balance. And equity is to make sure all parts of remedy and resolve are found, that no person is left out in the cold, that all people have the right amount of food, that if you need to have your roof repaired and you don't have a ladder because your back is hurt, that you can still have help in your community because you're a part of that community. And equity is for all people to come to individually, not as beggars, but as people who are part of a communal society, knowing that other people will help them. Equity is a state of being, a state of mind, and equity is the natural balance of Earth.
And this is what happens for every cell in our body.
Yes.
We are built over this model, and so is nature, of course, but within us, no cell left behind.
Yep.
Even a paper cut will need repair.
Yep.
And that's beautiful. I just would like to go back 1 second for that. You think you mentioned the life review?
Yep.
A friend of mine who was in her 70s, and it was in the 70s, had a very best friend, companion, a wonderful woman who had a kind of a near-death experience on the dental office. At the dental office, she had a reaction towards the drug, and then she came back. But she had her full-blown tunnel and light, and she had a beginning of a life revision. So when she came back, she told this friend of ours, well, I thought I knew myself as a good meditator. I thought I was really at a certain level. She was a theosophist. But I realized that whatever I thought was very difficult, things that I did, mistakes, they counted for nothing. They were just on my path because they were supposed to be there. Other things that I never paid attention to, they were very heavy. Little omissions here and there, things I didn't even realize could have been a burden. But yes, perhaps of this 1 degree of separation you mentioned, Andrew. But we are not able to do that understanding, that life review, as we are still with our brain and our body. Isn't interesting?
Well, I think every human being can have a living life review if they enter the true circle of trust their heart can create. When they activate that heart frequency and the pericardium that holds the waters of the heart life crystallize and create a bioelectric frequency of love around you. And, after deep sexual experience, people encounter that. Their heart space turns on and they can bond, and there's an egg of protection around them. That's that glow you feel. That's the glow when women are pregnant. And men have that experience too. You can get to that state and express love in such a way that your little bubble of reality is your permanent bubble of reality with 100% contrast control. When it applies meditation and visual and imagery processes, you can go into the original concepts of your DNA. And it's how I returned to the fetus in my mother's womb to understand the infinite energy again. Separate of the skills that I had to learn coping skills, because there are times we run into parts of our life that we can really screw up. We can really make serious mistakes. And when we use this life review process and we use it as part of your guided imagery and meditation in your own circle of trust where you're in that heart love and knowing your imagery is real, you can do things. You can go back to your own other version of yourself, like a child. I do this with sessions where clients that have sexual abuse, I can take them back to the moment just after the abuse where they're crying, and we can open a portal in the mind with that love frequency and heal that child. That does not change the past. The person's frequency in the future is instantly changed because they recognize the damage and signature frequency of the abuser, and we can remove it from their field through the use of contract revocation specifically for that zone of violence, and that child be surrounded in that same frequency of love, which they still recognize as that fetus energy.
This is fantastic that you're answering that. I'm very, very happy with your answer. And I also know that the very earth has changed for the spiritual experience.
Yes.
This now, 21st century, is not the 1970s. Nope. It is quite, it is so much more tangible, this possibility of the repatterning and even reparenting. This is fantastic. I love your answer. I also know that because she was French, it did her great to leave some part for a question mark. We don't need to own it all right now. Let's just be. But intellectually, there are some areas that we might only reach in meditation. We do not need an absolute construct at all times. And we might even stumble upon some. But this grace, this désinvolture, as they would say in French, is important. Let's partake the joy of not knowing and being.
Exactly. And when we live in the moment-to-moment, co-creating, manifesting beings that we aren't in the past and we aren't in the future, but the past is our teacher, the present is our creation, and the future is our inspiration, so that the moment-to-moment spiritual locomotion of our views on all dimensions and time streams manifests here with this need to procreate children because we are part of a shared reality. And this shared reality we have incredible power over, to bring back into equity, to back into this concept of heart space. And the children, they will teach us incredible lessons. In
okay,
the
now
exchange,
main question, why would we have children? Why would somebody today want a child? Can you give me some whys? I often start my workshops with that question. Interesting answers, but I'd love to hear.
From my experience of reading well over 10,000 people this lifetime, and I have had many pregnant women, people about to be pregnant, and I can read the child, the Akashic record of the child. It's so different than what you'd really think. There are so many spirits that want to be in here before the spark that causes the, when you ever seen the stadium of the football game where they all stand up and they do a wave around the stadium?
Yes.
Imagine that energetically around our world where we all share a moment of dream time and equity be the common theme of that. And we'd all have that commonly shared for the next week, unless you're a person that's disconnected from your dream world severely, and then maybe only a third of our population or half of our population would experience that. And that would be a gigantic change because everyone has something to relate to. And then it could be another couple months before that next wave and that next wave and that next wave comes. And it's the children who will teach us. As for those people who are waiting to come in and wanting to be birthed, they're here contractually, and many have been planning this lifetime hundreds of lifetimes in advance, making sure that particular karmic obstacles were taken care of before. And there are others who fell into those obstacles on purpose to be here, to be in the system of domination or control, because the story has all sides. It has light, it has dark, it has neutral, it has ugly, the beautiful, and everything. And in a unity expression, no one is left behind. That includes the dark and the light, where they must put down their swords and go through swords and plowshares and become a part of equity, where they no longer need to be stuck in a belief system that light must battle dark at all times, because it does not. It is simply the belief system that we have been procreating over many thousands and thousands of years, because our ancestors have been passing on to us a debt of karma. That is energy that our children must be born through, called ancestral karma. And we, as manifesting, co-creating sovereign beings in equity, do not have to accept the mistakes of the ancestors that has created this mutant system of ancestral karma that is not only affecting human beings but all other species on this planet, the seen and the unseen, the physical and the non-physical. And it is our duty as human beings to begin to look at how we are polluting this world spiritually and begin to bring it back into equity by allowing our hearts to be full frequency beings.
You have reached here a frequency that I have often felt at sunrise. That extraordinary first ray of sun, with those rays afterwards coming horizontally to the earth, that quantity of prana, where nature seems to be breathing exactly what you were saying here. I love it. Thank you.
And thank you, Laura. We've only got about 2 minutes left to the show. Do you want to give contact information out to all the people that will be listening?
Well, I have a website called wondersofthewomb.com, wondersofthewomb.com, and there is an email there, and you can have an idea of the extraordinary responsibility nature has entrusted parents, and especially mothers, with upon the arrival of a son or a daughter. And perhaps the main thing we can do is not to disturb them. And I think you brought that very well. The child, why to have children? Because they want to come. That would have been your answer. And how not to get on the way of the development of the physical body and then the physical existence. This is great. Yes, now we have 90 seconds. But thank you, Andrew. What an extraordinary gift to be able to consult with the Akashic records. We will have more and more clairvoyance and beings able to consult the very essence. I dream of a news, like a CNN headline news with the very news, and a person reading into the Akashic records, just translating. Why is that?
That's part of my view too, actually, and that's one of the reasons I came to New Earth Nation and helped them manifest their first ever webinar, their first ever radio station, and to put this content machine together, because New Earth Nation Radio, there is a New Earth Nation News right now. All that's coming together.
Yes, and I'm really happy to be part of this adventure. We need that new, that is the very old, of course, but the ancient and the primordial that's manifested now in our freedom. Thank you so much, Andrew.
And thank you, Laura. And if you'd like to get a hold of me, you can go to the galactichistorian.com, and you can check out all the information that I have over there. You can also head over to newearthnation.org and check out New Earth Nation on Facebook. And Pixie is telling us we've got 10 seconds. Thank you, New Earth Nation Radio, and thank you, everyone out there in the world. If you'd like to volunteer, get a hold of New Earth Nation Project, and we are always looking for people that want to help promote this project moving forward. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, and much light.